This is a video on how to do an inspection at Patrick Express. This is intended to be used by associates and LP to learn how to inspect the fueling equipment at this site. Your trainer is Robert Largent.
This is the agenda we're going to go through: an introduction, a little explanation about ECAPs, and then we're going to look at inspecting Patrick Express. I start off with this slide because it shows the responsibilities of the military, what they're supposed to pay to have repaired, and the issues that they are in charge of. Our sole responsibility is the dispensers. This is your environmental team. You can feel free to call any of us at any time. There are a lot of different contacts in here, and each of us has our own specialty that we are responsible for. ECAP stands for the Environmental Compliance Assessment Program. Loss prevention associates come out to our sites and provide a third pair of eyes to oversee compliance at our gas stations and stores. I put together the checklist for them that they use when they do inspections, and a lot of those things overlap with this. ECAP are intended to be performed annually by our LP associates to help us address any oversight we may have where we're not paying the proper attention to certain issues in the field. And it gives me, as the environmental engineer, the head of the environmental program, data so that I can see where I may be failing in my trainings or other issues. We take the information from the ECAP and report those quarterly in an ESAC meeting to the leadership of the exchange. The thing about the ECAP is that these are not intended to be punitive inspections. These are a fail-safe so that we can make sure that we are doing the things that need to be done. They are not intended to get anyone in trouble. They are intended to make sure we are doing the proper things to maintain compliance at our locations. So if you fail an ECAP inspection, it doesn't have the punitive repercussions that you would have if you were issued an NOV by the state, but they are still serious, and you do need to take them serious and address them. We're going to first talk about inspections outside. We're going to go outside the store and do an inspection here. First thing we want to address is safety. The driveways of gas stations are not safe places. So use the proper safety procedures. Wear bright colored vests or clothes. Usually perform these in teams of two, one to provide oversight for traffic and other things, and the other one to do the actual inspection. It's easiest if you use a vehicle with flashing lights to blockade some of the traffic, especially if you're in a high traffic area during a high traffic time of day. This is me out at one of our sites with my bright yellow shirt and the big orange pylons behind me, and those still have been run over numerous times when I've been out on sites, and the customer just never noticed. This is my partner when we used to do inspections for the Cherokee Nation. He actually dislocated his shoulder lifting one of these heavy manhole covers. Be aware that some of these can be extremely heavy and very cumbersome. My recommendation is to do your inspections in the tank pit area whenever a delivery driver has finished doing their delivery and are packing up, so you can then look in the spill buckets to make sure there's no product left in them, and you have the added safety of having a big old semi there with all his safety gear set up so that it can protect you from being ran over. One thing I'd like to reiterate: it is not safe to work in the tank area by yourself. You need to put up safety barriers, cones, a vehicle if you have one. And it's good to have two people out here so you have a spotter whenever you're doing this. I'm going to open this unleaded, see what's down there. It's a surprise to both of us. You ready? Come on, be good. Oh, I need a screwdriver. So, I'll do it. Hold on a second. Go into a little bit about the actual inspections now. We're going to start at the dispenser. When we talk about the dispenser, we're talking about the part with the little horse on it up at the top. The dispenser is often called the pump by the customers, but when I'm talking about it, I refer to it as a dispenser. When you're checking your parking area, make sure all the spill kits are intact. They have all the required contents that you're going to need. Check the area. Make sure there's no obvious leaks or stains on the ground. Nobody's had any major spills recently. Check the emergency shut-off switches. Can you see them from the dispensers? because you want the customers to be able to identify those quickly in an emergency. There is a little bit of signage up there. You have fire extinguishers, but just make sure that, if you're at the farthest point possible in the store getting gas as a customer, can you see where to go to shut off fuel if there's an accident or an emergency?
What is wrong with this?
This is how a customer would get fuel at one of our gas stations. Pull up to the pump, I call it dispenser. Activate the dispenser with your credit card or your mobile app. You take the nozzle, put it into the tank cap. You then lock it open, because that's what it's supposed to do. Activate the grade of fuel you want, and then let it go, and it kicks off whenever it's full. Then take the nozzle out, tap it a couple times, getting excess off of it. Hang it back up. You wait, because you asked for a receipt. And if you're lucky, you get one. And don't forget to close your gas cap. And whatever you do, don't drive off with the hose still in your car.
Know who to contact if a customer drives off with a hose or nozzle. LP may be able to assist.
The outside of the dispenser is covered by the Stage 1 vapor inspection checklist. Basically, what you're looking at is the nozzles, the hoses, the breakaways, the display, the card reader, the overall area looks in the dispenser. When you are checking the dispensers, what you're going to look for is make sure the emergency breakaway is still in good shape. Check the hoses and the nozzle to make sure there's no kinks, no holes, no cracking. Make sure there's no fluids leaking anywhere on the hose. Check the ground around it, the area, just to make sure there's no staining or no obvious fuel in the area. Make sure people can read the price when they get fuel. Make sure the card reader is operational. You can read the buttons on the card reader. You can see the grades, and the grades are correct. They match up to the signs and whatever you've programmed inside. And that's about all you have to do when you're looking at just the outside of the dispenser. Again, this is when you're checking the outside of the dispenser. We'll talk about inside in a little bit. Tank equipment that are underground. The one purpose of the sump is to prevent gas from entering the environment. This is where you can get a practical help and checklist from the EPA. Everything about sumps. If you are curious about something about the sumps or you want more information, you can go to this URL and get that checklist. Dispenser sumps, we call those the under dispenser containment sumps, or the UDC sumps. Under dispenser containment sumps, they're designed to protect the piping that goes into the dispenser. They're also designed so that any fuel that comes from the dispenser will be contained and not enter the environment. This is the view under a dispenser. When you take the front panel off the dispenser, you can often see inside the plastic looking containment area, the yellow area at the bottom. That has to be there to keep any liquids from getting into the ground. The metal pieces that are going across that area, these are your supports. They should be anchored firmly to the concrete and the dispenser containment area underneath. And then attached to those are your shear valves, also called fire valves and crash valves, because they serve multiple purposes. And then you have your dispenser filters underneath there. And the one thing you want to make sure is you check the dates on those dispenser filters, and also put your fingers underneath them sometimes. If you see any leaking or liquids under them, it may be an indication that the dispenser filters are old, or they need to be changed out, or they weren't properly threaded on. We're going to take a look inside dispenser number 18. So to get into them, you have to open them right here. And this key fits that lock. You just unscrew it like you're using a screwdriver and you pop it open. Once you get it unscrewed, it kind of falls towards you. So all you have to do, all I do, use my knee to prop it up, move the hose out of the way, let it fall just a little bit, put the hose back. I don't know if I recorded that, but hopefully the words help. So then once you get it, you have to lift up on it just a little bit, and let it slide out. And don't forget where your screws are, because those are important. In a windy day, try and set it so it doesn't blow away and hit a customer's car. Then what you're looking for when you look in here, and I just opened this for the first time, so I'm discovering everything. One thing, it'd be a lot easier to open from the other side. You can see a lot more. So I'm gonna do that and I'll get back to you.
Then Robert moved to the 17 side of this dispenser. There is usually more light to see inside the UDC with both sides open.
So now I've got the 17 side of this dispenser open. You can see it's a lot more easy to access. So what you have when you're looking in here, the first thing you'll notice is the shear valves. Shear valves should be anchored to the concrete so that they don't move, and customers will run you over while you're sitting because they think you look like a good speed bump. Anyway, if you ever have an incident that you need to shut off fuel, right here is the easiest way to do it. You just reach in, you pop that piece up, and the whole thing will shut off, and there's a butterfly valve in there. It shuts off flow of fuel right here, so nothing goes up into the further parts of this. So what you're looking at down below, first, make sure there's no liquids down there. Second, that's your sump sensor down there. Make sure it's flush with the bottom of the sump, so that if any liquids get in there, it'll go into alarm. And then you look at the filters. You can see when they have dates on them, see how long they've been there. We have sites that they've been there for a very long time and not been changed. Look along the piping, see if you can see any drips that may indicate you have some kind of issues with your piping. This has got a little moisture on it. Sometimes that happens when they change out stuff. You're gonna get gas on it. You can kind of feel it. That feels pretty dry. See, no moisture on my fingers. You can then look what kind of piping you have going in there. We have blue pipes going in there. Those are double wall, flexible piping. Pisces, I believe. And there's a gap. You can barely see a gap between the blue and that metal piece. So if there is a release in that piping, it should drain right there into this sump, and that's why you have the sump sensors. So that's basically what you're looking at when you open up a sump sensor. So when you're putting these covers back on, it's just the opposite. You slot it in, make sure you get those over that little metal piece that sticks out there on both sides, and then it just falls into place. You close it up, put your foot against it, find your screws, screw it back together. You need to know your sumps. The STP or sub-turbine pump sumps, those are on top of your tanks, and those are designed to contain any gasoline that drains in that area. So the STP containment areas, you need to make sure that they're clean and dry and there's no gas or water inside. If you have gas or water in them, like this one down here on the bottom right, that is a bad STP sump, and that site will be written up for that. You should have a contractor come in annually and check in all these, so you shouldn't have to get into them. The alarm should go off if water gets into them. This is what it looks like at a site that had a lot of snow on top of it. One of the things I usually suggest, if you're at a site that has a lot of snow, which I don't think Patrick has, put some kind of pylon over them whenever you know a snow event is coming, some way to mark them so the delivery driver can find them whenever they come on site, and snowplow drivers can avoid them whenever they're clearing a site. These are the things you look for when you look into an STP sump. And this is what some STP sumps look like. The problem when you have water up this high, when you open up that lid, that water, even if it's dry now, there's nowhere for the water to go except inside there. So it's kind of difficult when you have a site that looks like this to keep it dry. You look inside, you make sure they're sealed correctly, there's no water in there. These are the STP sumps for the Patrick Express. And we're looking at the regular unload tank. You can see they've stenciled the tank number, the product that's stored in this tank, and then they've color-coded the tank drop points, white with the black cross for unleaded, and we have 3 unleads, and red with a white cross for premium. Well, these are the things that you want to look at when you get in these sumps. You want to make sure the sump sensors are even with the bottom of the sump, that they are straight up and down. If they are sideways or they've been elevated any height, that is to avoid them going into alarm. Make sure they're positioned properly. They should be at the lowest point of the sump and below the pipe entry. They shouldn't be raised because they're trying to avoid some type of alarm, and you see that quite a bit. I'm at the Patrick Express and Patrick Space Force Base in Florida, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 dispensers at this location, and 4 12,000 gallon double walled fiberglass tanks, and all of those are manifolded with 1 vent pump. This is the Patrick Express.
Check the vent pipe daily. Make sure the cap is firmly in place on top. Look for rusting or holes in the pipe. Make sure no one has run into the pipe.
Spill buckets. Spill buckets are what we find the most violations from. We get NOVs on these, and our LP inspections usually find some kind of issues with spill buckets most often. So spill buckets come in many shapes and sizes. You can find all kinds out there. The only thing you have to do with the spill bucket, keep them clean, keep water and dirt out. Make sure you keep the fill caps locks. Make sure there's no liquids in them. That seems to be our biggest issue. Make sure they're in good condition. If you see any cracks in the lid or if you see holes in them, make sure they're getting the periodic maintenance they're supposed to, because if you have water in them or gas, it's a violation. You need to make sure you keep them clean, and you get down on your hands and knees and look around and make sure that they are in good shape, because sometimes when you look, you'll see these cracks in them. One of the reasons one spill bucket may be full of water and the next one may not have any water, the second one may have a crack in it, and that's the only reason it doesn't have water. Look at the outside of it, make sure it's in good condition. This is what happens when a snowplow tackles a spill bucket, and the spill bucket usually ends up losing. So we want to try and avoid these if we can. Make sure there's nothing down the drop tube. Sometimes delivery drivers will put the sticks down the drop tube because they feel like it makes their delivery go faster and they can fill it up more without worrying about overfilling it. I lied. I am not opening this one. You need a screwdriver to pop that piece open right there. And my fingers are not working as screwdrivers today. So hopefully there's no liquids down there. That's all I was going to look and see. That one will be easy because it's bent. This one, not easy. We're going to go inside and look at record keeping now. The first thing you want to do is find your fuel system checklist. Make sure those are displayed prominently. That's a good thing for our sites to have them displayed well, and for inspectors to see them when they arrive at our sites to know we take these things serious. So this is your fuel system checklist poster. We recommend highlighting the annual and triennial stuff just to let you know, remind you those are APF expenses. Of course, it's normally next to a bathroom, so it's easy to find.
Let's look at the Vita route.
Here's where your Vita route is, and it's a touch screen TLS 450 Plus. You can get all this information on Insight 360,
But if you touch the screen, it'll come up and show you your tanks, your volumes, your ullage. Ullage is the free space in the tanks. And if there's any alarms and this light starts blinking red, this book on the end should explain to you what the different alarms mean. And if they don't, and you still want to know, you can give me an email, call, whatever, and I can help you.
We use a 3-binder system. Most of the records the inspector needs are in binder 2. Permanent records in binder 1. Binder 2, we want to aim that at your UST inspections, UST regulations. Binder 3 is everything else. We usually have the table of contents on the end of the binder. We suggest using colored binders. At a lot of our gas stations, they use white binders for everything. Using like green colored binders can make it easier to find them quickly whenever you need them. This is your table of contents for what's in each one of your binders. Usually you'll have them stored somewhere where they can be found pretty easy. Number 2, this is your operation, testing, and inspection records. This binder has most of the records that your underground storage tank inspectors are really going to want to see. The binder contains results of test inspections, the walkthrough inspection checklist that you should be completing, any annual tests, the system inspection tests, maintenance. The APF should pay for those, but we should make sure that they're in the binder. Vapor recovery, any kind of sump testing or spill bucket testing, your state, federal inspection reports, and these are the records and how long you need to keep them for each category. We try to keep these for as long as possible until our binder gets too big. If you can keep them electronically, it makes it a lot easier to keep your binder volume down.
So here we have binder 2 for Patrick Express. You can see it's very nicely covered over the front, and it's quite thick. So you open it up, and we have the binder settings, and then we get down to looking in the binder, and we start off with what to do. Very nice.
If you're allowed to by your regulatory agency or your installation, you can keep these records electronically. You could have several years worth of records in a folder on your computer or in a portal area that you could get to them whenever you need to.
You can see they've colored the tabs and labeled them quite well. So you have your monthly detection, and then you have your 30-day checklist. And by having them different colors, they're easy to find.
Day release detection results, you want to keep your tank release detection, your line release detection. Easiest way to do that is to get a printout from your Insight 360. When you get these compliance reports from Insight 360, and then easily go through them, and you can see I've broken them down into the categories that you would be using. These are your interstitial monitoring for your tanks. The only thing you really need to do is make sure it says normal over here on the right hand side. If each of those for each tank is normal, you're done. You just put that in for the month and you've completed your compliance. Some sites we have tank release detection that is doing tank tightness testing, so all you need is a pass for that test each month. And then line release detection, you have the same interstitial monitoring in your line release detection, and for that you would need the same results, and that would be just a normal result for each line or each STP. As long as those are normal, you are in compliance with line release detection requirements. We also have a lot of our sites that are doing line pressurized tests. So for a line pressurized test, what you're looking at is if you have one 0.1 gallon per hour test, annual test, that's passed within the last 365 days, that line is good for a year from that day. If you have 1.2 gallon per hour monthly test and it has passed each month for the last 12 months, that is good. You can have either or, so you don't have to have both of these working. If just the 0.1 gallon per hour test has passed for the last year, you're still in compliance. If 12 of these 0.2 gallon per hour have passed for the last 12 months, you're still in compliance. So either of those works as a standalone line release detection result.
Looking through the binder, you see over here the first tab, monthly release detection results. And here you have the release detection results for the last month. Now this right here kind of gives you an overview of the whole site. This page is the one the inspector is going to be really excited about. This is going to tell them everything is passed, everything is normal. That's exactly what you want to see. These compliance reports are printed from Insight 360. So you print them out, you punch holes in them, you place them in your binder, and you're done for that month. So this has the compliance results, which we talked about a second ago. And it also has, for sites that need it, your site inventory control reports. Now these reports, the only thing you're really needing is that green spot right there for each tank in your system on each of these pages. So sites that have more than one tank, you're gonna have more than one page of this, but that's all you need.
Make sure you're using your checklist and you're following those correctly in your binders. The daily, weekly UST inspection checklists. These are required at all of our sites. Your site is staffed every day. You should be doing these every day. Some of these checks can be accomplished really easily during deliveries. The delivery drivers act as a good safety barrier for you when you go out there. They open all the spill buckets, so you don't even have to do that. You just go out there and look over their shoulder and make sure everything's good. The 30-day inspection checklist, you have to do one of these every 30 days. They're called monthly, but the EPA's made it so that you have to do one every 30 days because they were having people monkey around with it. They were coming out February 28th and they were doing one, and then they were coming out March 1st and doing one. They were calling those monthly. So basically they were doing one every 60 days. EPA made it a strict rule that it's every 30 days you have to do one of these checklists.
It looks like this location is paying someone to do monthly inspections of their sites. So they have somebody coming out and doing a checklist, looking at the tanks, spill buckets, and the dispensers. And that's fine. Anybody can do it, an associate can do it, or the installation can pay someone to do it for them.
We usually have our associates do the monthly, weekly, daily checks. But to do an annual test, you have to have a contractor do it, and it's required by the EPA. So it's an environmental compliance requirement, so that makes it an APF expense, and the APF expense means the military should be paying to have these tests done. We want to make sure that the military is aware when these tests are due. That's about all we really need to do. Annual inspections, we have a checklist for those, but it just kind of lets you know what needs to be done. It's not meant for you to go out and do these annual checks. These should be done by a qualified contractor. Annual tests performed by technicians. That includes testing the VETA route, inspecting sumps, spill buckets, overfill devices, make sure the emergency shutoff switch works correctly, check shear valves. We do have to do calibrations and filter changes. Those are NAF expenses, which means they're APHIS expenses. So we want to make sure we get those done. Emergency shutoff, we want those tested annually because they don't do us any good if they don't work. So we just want to be sure that those work.
Did you figure out what was wrong here? How would anyone activate this emergency stop?
Triennial tests, those are required by some air regulations and some UST regulations. They should both be paid for by the military because they are for real property and they are to meet environmental compliance requirements.
We're at the annual tank information, annual tank and line leak detection testing, which you'll find those. The third and fourth ones down. So actually you could put the third, fourth, and fifth, the annual, and then 3-year test results, all pretty much in the same area. So what we have here is 2020, that is dated 2021, but it says it's the annual testing for 2020. I don't see any results for 2022. Now what we run into sometimes is since the installation pays for these tests, they may keep all those results. It would be nice if they gave us a copy, but as long as the results are available to an inspector when they arrive on site, you should be good. But you need to be communicating with your environmental people on the installation so that you know where those are if an inspector asks you.
State inspection results. We want to keep a copy of the results from the last state inspection. We have a way to continue our knowledge base. You get your state inspection results, upload a copy to the Environmental Incident Portal. We're going to look at the inspection reports. These are the reports that are filled out whenever a state or federal inspector comes to your site and does an official inspection. So what we're looking at here is from the Florida Department. Their UST program has come out and done an official inspection. And having these reports available to you helps you know what to expect when the next inspector is coming. So we try to keep the binders with these inspections in place so that the new manager, if they've replaced managers from the last time, will be able to look at these as a reference source so that they know what to be prepared for the next inspection when the state inspector arrives. So make sure you have your Class A, B, C operator training certifications. We recommend having at least 2 associates per site so that if one leaves, we still have someone in place while there's a gap between, say, the managers are changing and the new manager may not have their AB operator training. It would be awful if we had a manager leave, inspector show up, and now the new manager is on site. We don't have our AB operator training in place. So we want to maintain that continuity between one manager to the next. It doesn't hurt to have more than 2 managers trained at your site, especially at sites where these trainings are free. If you can get a wide variety of associates trained, then an inspector shows up at 4:30 and all the normal day managers are gone. Hopefully the shift manager will be prepared if an inspector shows up and starts asking questions. The one thing I didn't mention is Class C operators. If you take the LEX training for fuels emergency response, that training is supposed to meet the Class C operator requirements in most states. That would keep you from having to spend money in some states to get your associates trained as Class C operators. There's just a PDF at the end of it that you fill out. The Class AB operator signs off on it, and that C operator is now certified as a Class C operator. And here we have looking at Class AB operators and what they have in the book and what those mean. We want to make sure that the proper data is on it and that the names are on it and that we're good to go.
So the one issue I'm finding with this binder, this little doohickey right here is driving me crazy because it keeps catching all the pages and won't let me turn the page very easy. I don't know how to fix that, but if I were the manager, I'd freaking find a way to fix it and grr me.
As a summary, make sure you keep repaired or upgrade UST system results for the life of the system. Operator certification, keep it as long as the employee is employed there. Any kind of performance claims, annual release detection. So just keep these things as long as you can.
Thank you for watching this video. I hope it helped you understand how to organize your binder number 2 and maintain compliance with environmental regulations. If you need anything, contact any of the people listed on this page. We are your environmental team and we hope to help you stay in compliance. If you have any suggestions for future videos or trainings, please let us know.
The one thing I ask is whenever you take the fuel management trainings at the bottom, let me know if you have any suggestions or any ideas to make them better. Remember, check the environmental portal if you have any questions. There's guidance on how to do ECAP inspections in there. There's guidance on how to do regular associate inspections. We try to put everything where everybody can find it and they can use it really easily. I thank you for your time. If you have any questions for me, let me know. My name is Robert Largent. I'm your environmental engineer. Thank you.